This video is sponsored by Signum Games. We'll hear a message from them later on. This model was $2,200. It's a 75mm sculpt of a character from a video game that no one knows. Objectively, nothing is special about it. For $2,200, I imagine it should probably make my breakfast, edit my videos, and paint my unpainted minis. At the very least, it should come at least assembled. Why did I spend so much money on something that should cost 45 bucks? To fully answer that question, we need to go back in time a little bit. For as long as I can remember, I've been interested in PC gaming. My parents wouldn't buy me a gaming console, so I staked my claim over the household PC, enjoying titles like Warcraft 3 Reign of Chaos, Age of Empires 2, and World of Warcraft. But this video isn't about those games. It's about a game that came along a little bit later called Heroes of Newerth. Let's do a little video game history. Blizzard, the developers of Warcraft franchise, released a tool to make custom modes of their game called the Warcraft 3 World Editor. Some smart people used that tool to create a game called Dota, an acronym that stands for Defense of the Ancients, that you could play inside of Warcraft 3 itself. Dota was so good that it spawned a whole genre of video games called MOBAs, another acronym standing for Massive Online Battle Arenas, which you likely have heard of before. The genre is so massive that tournaments for Dota 2, Dota 1's successor, have massive prize pools of $40 million, amassing tens of millions of views for these events. My theory as to why MOBAs are so big is because Dota was way ahead of its time in terms of the video game industry. While everyone else's multiplayer experience was a basic public lobby that amounted to a revolving door of unknown people coming in and out that would never stop running, Dota was a team-based game. A game that would live and die by the requirement of having very specific roles on your team. And while one might say that games like Team Fortress Classic invented this archetype, my argument is that MOBAs took it to another level and popularized it. Now games like Valorant, Overwatch, Apex Legends feature role-based gameplay mechanics in genres that were drowning in vanilla team deathmatch modes. You might say that this style of multiplayer makes for a terrible gameplay experience, and sometimes, maybe even often, you'd be right. When you're missing a critical role, it feels really bad to play, but when it works, there is no feeling in video game history that feels so good as a coordinated group of 5 individuals harmoniously and systematically murdering the enemy team. To break it down, in a classic MOBA, there are 3 lanes of creeps that run at each other, wave after wave, crashing into each other. Their goal, and yours also, is to kill the enemy ancient, a building, hence the name Defense of the Ancients. Each lane is home to a specific type of character or characters that have a certain role to play in the game. The safe lane is for a carry to get a good start in the game money-wise and to grow to be an unstoppable force by the time the game ends, while being assisted by a support player whose job it is to keep that carry alive while also assisting other lanes and other admin work. The off lane is where these scrappy players go who want to bust up the other team's carry. They often have high kill potential, lots of lockdown, and decent mobility. Finally, you have the mid lane, my chosen lane and role. Mid lane has a certain intimacy or romance to it, or at least I like to imagine it does. It's you versus the other guy in a classic 1v1, almost an homage to classic PC games like Quake, Unreal Tournament, and Painkiller. From this lane, you can either feel like a god or get slapped and have to retreat to a safer area. The risk is high. With some video game history out of the way, let's take a brief moment to thank the sponsor of this video. Signum Games is a miniature manufacturer that specializes in high-quality resin 32mm figures. Their figures are lovely fantasy sculpts that can also be used in games that they develop, such as Legends of Signum, Battle for Valor, a deck-building game, as well as a miniature game. All of their games have been funded successfully through Kickstarter in the past, so you may have even seen some already. They also encourage the use of their models in all sorts of fantasy role-playing games like D&D and Pathfinder. I was particularly drawn to the zombie Landsknecht and the one-eyed Galat. Both designs feature so much great character that would be a lot of fun to paint. In addition to resin options, Signum Games also has a Patreon campaign that features a ton of awesome 3D sculpts as rewards every single month. In April, we'll be looking forward to some very steampunky dwarf designs, chock full of coils and springs, and a great anatomy as well. If you're interested in checking out Signum Games, I've linked all the stuff in the description below, and you can get anything on their website at 15% off with the code Miniac at checkout. Thank you for sponsoring this episode, Signum Games, and thank you for supporting YouTubers. Now, back to the video. The character you're seeing me work on right now is Fade, a mid laner that I love to play. She's a roaming hero that causes absolute dread with her ability to appear anywhere and end lives instantly with her damage output and lockdown. She's a support player's worst nightmare, but also she's incredibly useless if she gets shut down early on in the laning stage. A risky hero and a risky lane. She was sculpted by the talented Daniel Fernandez, who was employed through the company Broken Anvil Miniatures. I first encountered Daniel's work when I was painting Hearguard from the Cult of Paint Kickstarter. He did a great job with sculpting anatomy, and that's true on this model as well. Fade is a hero in Heroes of Newerth, or Han as the player base calls it. Han was the very first remake of the original Dota, and I played it when it first came out in beta in 2010, and I loved it. I wasn't the only one who loved it though. All of my friends loved it as well. We loved it so much that we bought merch for the game, carved pumpkins inspired by the game, had LAN parties dedicated to playing Han. We created a YouTube channel called So Pros where we played Han as a group. We even managed to get our squad's Omega Gamer strats on the game's premier YouTube channel that highlighted awesome plays. Remember when video game montage YouTube channels were a thing? Heck, even one of my talented, musically inclined friends created a little jingle all about the game that we would play on repeat whenever we needed to summon our group for a session. Time for the Miniac channel premiere of Han Song.
I don't really know why you guys are digging around with Smite. Let's play somehow. Right now, I'm not in the mood for Smite or Dota, and League sucks balls. Let's play Come on.
It's true though. We love the game so much that we as a friend group literally played it for a decade. Other video games came and went, but Han was eternal. At this point, I don't think I need to convince you anymore that we loved this game. When we all graduated from high school, I left to attend college in Minnesota and ended up staying, whereas my friends ended up in Wisconsin. Suffice it to say that our LAN party days were pretty much over. While a 6-hour drive isn't a ton, it's enough to make hanging out pretty difficult. This kind of separation is enough to kill off really any kind of friendship. Apathy is a strong human tendency, and without intentionality, my grade school friends were history. However, to this day, my friends and I still hang out regularly and meet up, and the sole reason is Heroes of Newerth. Video games can often get a bad rap, whether it's encouraging violence, melting your brain, or whatever else the news fed mothers in the 90s to stamp video games out, but to me, video games saved my friendships. They meant that despite the distance, we could still remain connected. We always had a reason to be chatting and reaching out to one another to see if we can get the mythical 5-man team on any day of the week, and because of that constant need, we all grew as friends. As the great Seb of Dota 2's Team OG said, we fight together, we slay together. And if I could amend it just a little bit, we fight together, we slay together, we stay together. Video games, specifically Heroes of Newerth, allow me to maintain friendships that have been around since I was 6 years old, and I know I'm not the only one. I'm sure you have games that have done the exact same thing for you and your friends, and I'm sure that just like me, you've made friends in video games that you still talk to now. So, is this model worth $2,200? You could argue that because it's unique and not going to be reproduced that it has some collector value, but to you, there's likely no way that any sane person would pay that much for this model. But to me, this one-of-a-kind mini represents my friends and the love I've cultivated for them through Han. It's a reminder that even when we're separated by distance, by ever-growing schedules and responsibilities, even by a global pandemic, we'll always have Han, and that is priceless.
No candle burns forever. the shadows whisper. It's not a thorn. It's magical armor.